Hello, everybody. Welcome to Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. I'm Nick Palavita. I'll be your moderator for today's show. And today's show, we're going to focus on a very important topic, which is America at Risk. This is taken from David Walker's book. If you don't have it, America 2040, Still a Superpower, question mark. And he has an updated version of that. So with that, with no further ado, we're going to bring in the former Comptroller General of the United States of America, the Honorable David M. Walker, to discuss America at Risk. David, you're up.
Good to see you, Nick. Thanks. Let me show you what the new book actually looks like. And it's important that if people want to get it, that they get the updated version, because I'm still working with Amazon to get them to take down the old version. The new version says with an update through 2023, and there's a lot that's happened since it was originally published. And so with that, let me start. Look, I know this show is global, and that's important. And I know that the United States is only one country out of almost 200 in the world. At the same point in time, I think it's pretty undisputed that the United States is the leading superpower on Earth, but not the only superpower on Earth. And by leading, I mean the country that has the largest nominal GDP economy, the strongest military, very strong global international influence, and very strong cultural influence. China is coming up. China's got larger purchasing power parity than the United States does, but not nominal GDP. It actually has more embassies and consulates than the United States does by a few. It has also a strong military that's getting stronger day by day, and it has significant cultural influence around the world. But, if I can, let me just talk to you a little bit about some of the dimensions of being a superpower and where things are now and where things are trending, and then we can kind of open it up. First, from an economic standpoint, if you look at the U.S., we've had decent economic growth. We had 3.2% real GDP growth in the fourth quarter. We had about 2.5% for calendar 2023, and that's better than many countries. But a lot of that growth is debt financed, meaning that we threw a lot of money, we bought a lot of things, but that had an adverse effect with regard to our deficits and debt, and I'll come back to that. Consumer spending was reasonably strong, but a lot of that was debt financed. Household debt is at record levels. And so the bottom line is there are things that you can do in order to stoke the economy in the short term, but could end up not being able to be sustained over time if it's based upon debt financed activities, whether it be at the government level, whether it be the individual level, or frankly, even if it relates to the private sector. Unemployment is low. It's not as low as some of the politicians will tell you, because unemployment was actually lower at the pre-COVID levels than it is right now, but it's still low. At the same point in time, labor force participation, the percentage of people, working age individuals who are in the workforce, is still unacceptably low and has not recovered to the pre-COVID levels. Inflation's come down. It's come down considerably from a peak of 9.1% at an annualized rate in June of 2022. At the same point in time, it's actually ticked up a little bit the last couple of months. And when you look under the hood, as Ross Perot would say, inflation's been particularly bad in the last 3 years as it relates to rents, as it relates to food, as it relates to energy, as it relates to insurance, and certain items that every American has to have. And the people who get squeezed the most on that, in many cases, is the middle class. Real wages, meaning wages and increases in excess of inflation, went up in 2023. But when you look at it from the beginning of this administration to today, they're down, because they were down in 2021 and 2022. And so they haven't made up that gap. Deficits are huge, and projected to be huge for years to come. Debt continues to increase at or near record rates, even though COVID is over. The president talks about, well, I've reduced the deficit by $1 trillion. No, you haven't. It's called COVID's over. You didn't take any steps to really reduce the structural deficits. And that's something that we're going to have to come to grips with if we want our future to be better than our past. Our total liabilities and unfunded promises continue to go up. They went up about $6 trillion in the last year, over $6 trillion, now over $120 trillion, compared to about $20 trillion in the year 2000 at the beginning of this new millennium. Our Social Security and Medicare trust funds are projected to become exhausted within the next 10 years with automatic benefit cuts or payment cuts that will be made absent reforms. And yet our top two candidates say they don't want to touch Social Security. Well, that means that they're supporting, in effect, a 20% across the board cut in benefits in about 10 years. I don't think that's really what they mean, but that's the effect of doing nothing. We need leadership, not laggardship. From a security standpoint, the border is an absolute disaster. And yes, while legislation is needed in order to provide additional funding and to reform our immigration system, which is very outdated, there are things that can and should happen today to secure the border. And the president has the power to do that. He refuses to do it. And unless and until he secures the border, he's not going to get much progress with regard to immigration reform. First things first. Certain elements of crime are down, but overall, with regard to theft and with regard to auto theft and with regard to other forms of crime, murder may be down, but other forms of crime are up, especially in big cities. And that's been exacerbated by the illegal immigration problem. And yes, we're playing games over words about whether the illegal immigrants, and I don't like to use the word alien, they're human beings, whether the illegal immigrants should be called illegals, whether they should be called undocumented, or whether they should be called newcomers. Well, we're a country of laws. The fact is, when you cross the border illegally, you are illegal and you're an illegal immigrant. And we've had a terrible thing happen within the last couple of weeks, where an illegal immigrant went to New York, engaged in several criminal activities, was released. The city didn't cooperate with ICE because they're a sanctuary city. The person ended up getting released. He went down to Georgia, Athens, Georgia, where the University of Georgia is, which is not supposed to be a sanctuary city, but in substance they are, in form they're not. And he killed a young woman who was out jogging. And believe me, that was devastating. We feel for her family and all of her loved ones and friends. And just an example of how you got to get control of the border, if you will. International situation is a mess. Ukraine, Russia continues to go. Clearly, we need to provide them some additional military funding, along with additional border security funding and help for Israel in the fight against Hamas, and try to provide some additional funding to Taiwan to deter Chinese aggression on Taiwan. We did not do that for Ukraine. This administration has been late all too often. We didn't start helping Ukraine until after Russia invaded. And by the way, when Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, under a prior administration, not the prior administration, but Obama Biden, the United States did nothing, even though we had an agreement through the Budapest Agreement that we were supposed to protect their sovereignty. Hopefully that situation will get resolved soon. But I continue to believe, as I say in the book, it's going to end in a stalemate. And the question is, how quickly is that likely to happen? The Israel-Hamas situation is tragic. We're now into Ramadan starting tonight. If there's not an agreement reached by tonight for a temporary ceasefire in exchange for some additional hostages being released, it's probably not going to be done. That's a situation that continues to fester. The Houthis continue to fire on international shipping. Proxies of Iran continue to fire on U.S. troops in the region, and the administration just is not doing enough. The bottom line is it's viewed as weak, and therefore our adversaries are trying to take advantage of us on multiple fronts. We need, China is increasing their military budget this year about 7.2%. The president just proposed his budget today, a month late, and he's proposing a 1% increase for defense spending. And China, in many regards, is ahead of us in connection with hypersonic weapons, certain aspects of AI, and so we've got some ground that we need to make up. International situation I've touched on already on Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Hamas, Houthis, Iran. Haiti is now a mess again, and looks that government's under attack. There are likely to be more refugees leaving Haiti. They're likely to want to try to come either to Florida or through the southern border. And the Chinese continue to make progress on their Belt and Road activities, which is part of their strategic plan that has economic, diplomatic, and military dimensions. They are trying to gain access to critical ports. They're trying to gain access to critical minerals and other resources, if you will, in particular with regard to Africa and in particular with regard to South America. They're making progress. They have a plan. They're executing on the plan. U.S. has no plan that is a comprehensive, strategic, integrated, outcome-based, resource-constrained plan to make sure that we stay a superpower in 2040 and beyond. Bottom line, the book provides a scenario of what things could look like in 2040 if the U.S. doesn't change course. And it's not a pretty scenario, but it's a plausible scenario. It's not a desirable scenario. It takes lessons from history, past superpowers. It takes lessons from our nation's founders. It is a fact-based book, but it also includes proposed solutions dealing with the economic dimension, the security dimension, the domestic tranquility dimension, et cetera, in order to be able to address large, known, and growing problems that need to be effectively addressed if we want our future to be better than our past. So the answer to the question on the cover of the book, American 2040 : still a superpower, ? Is yes, if you start making some of these tough choices and follow some of the suggestions that are in the book that are tested by U.S. citizens with supermajority support in most cases. But unfortunately, our political leaders are not doing what needs to be done. We need to do it sooner rather than later. On the other hand, the answer is no if we continue on our present course. Will we still be around? Yes. Will we be an important country? Yes. But we will not be the dominant superpower in the world if we don't end up changing course in a number of these regards. Last thing, the leading indicator on the way up to become a superpower and the leading indicator on the way down in discontinuing to be a superpower is economic power. And if you can't put your finances in order, you will not remain an economic power. And right now, our finances in a state of disarray. They're projected to get worse. It's time that the president and the Congress do something about it, including cutting bloated spending, including passing a fiscal commission, statutory fiscal commission to make recommendations with regard to spending, revenues, et cetera, where everything's on the table, but not everything's equal, and including passing a constitutional amendment that will limit the growth of government, limit how much debt as a percentage of the economy we can take on, because after all, that's the key indicator. And shockingly, the United States is now paying more for interest than for defense. And what do you get for interest? Nothing. Nick, back to you, buddy. I can't hear you, Nick. You're muted, buddy.
Well, thank you, David, for that approach. And the thing is, I see this to be a big problem in the next 10 years. And I know people like to talk about climate change, but I see that to be a problem a century away or half a century away. Really, 50 to 100 years, it'll be a big problem. The economic problem I see happening in our lifetime. I see Medicare defaulting or having problems by the end of this decade, and Social Security running out of money next decade, and they're going to rely on the federal government to fund it, and the federal government's broke. So,
Well,
you know,
you
this is
make
gonna
a good point, Nick. I mean, you know, of course, a lot of people talk about environmental sustainability. And
right.
let's face it, climate change is real. Man has something to
Yes.
do with it. We can debate how much we have to do with it. Do we need to change course with regard to that? Yes, but it's not as big a threat and as immediate a threat as
Right.
people want to make it out to be. And some of the things that they are pushing us to do, frankly, are unrealistic, and in some cases actually have worse environmental implications than our current path. I mean, we're now finding out that EV vehicles are worse from the standpoint of the environment as it relates to certain aspects than carbon driven vehicles. And the other thing is we have to keep in mind, I know Rick wants to go here in a minute, we have to keep in mind that there are different aspects to sustainability. Yes, environmental is one, but fiscal is one. We are on an unsustainable fiscal path. Every major federal fiscal and monetary agency has said that for years, and yet nothing is being done about it.
Yeah. Right.
Here in California, we have the deal with, we got rid of plastic grocery bags. Turns out that cloth bags, these reusable bags, are worse for the environment than the plastic bags were. But you talk about making all these tough choices, the Americans, that we had to get our house in order. We can't make those choices if we got a ton of loonies in the government. Like that, you know, with Biden at least, you have normal government. With Trump, he's bad at stuff. He appoints people that are bad at stuff, and the people he appoints who are good at stuff, like Rex Tillerson, was a good Secretary of State. He tried to run the country to the extent he could, the way he ran Exxon. Tillerson left, like, I think after less than a year, because he couldn't stomach Trump. You know, so, you know, we're with Biden, you know, you're not going to get everything you want in terms of financial, you know, responsibility, but at least you'll have normal, competent people instead of like incompetent lunatics.
Well, Rick, I think reasonable people can and will differ on that. But let me tell you what the American people are most concerned about, and let's talk about a few facts on that, okay? The American people are most concerned with the economy, and that includes inflation, real wages, and fiscal responsibility and sustainability. That's number one. Number two, border security and crime. And number three, international stability. Now, the truth is, while I don't like Trump, and I think he doesn't have the kind of personality that I would want in a president of the United States, so I'm not for Trump. At the same point in time, when you look at the data on those three things, things were better under Trump than they are under Biden. And ultimately, the American people, I know that everybody wants to have a personality race. You know, gee, is Biden a nicer guy than Trump, and all these kinds of things. But in the final analysis, I think the American people are going to make decisions based upon data on the issues that they care about. And I will tell you this, Rick, rightly or wrongly, based upon the No Labels unprecedented extensive polling and modeling, 35,000 sample, not 800 to 2,000. Every state in the union with very sophisticated modeling before the State of the Union address, and we can talk about that if you want. Before the State of the Union address, Biden was losing in every scenario. He loses Trump versus Biden. He loses Trump versus Biden versus Kennedy. He loses Trump versus Biden versus a No Labels candidate. And in fact, in the latter case, he comes in third place.
How did you get your 35,000 people?
It's a statistically valid sample of nationally recognized polling organizations. That's how we got them. So it's statistically valid. But the difference is it's every state.
It's just, it gets harder and harder to get people who aren't loonies themselves to say yes to a political survey.
I hear you. No. I hear. Look, we got to take polls with more than a grain of salt. I agree with that. My only point is, when a lot of people are going to say, am I better off today than I was on January 21st, 2021? A lot of people are going to say that. And I hope that No Labels ends up providing a viable third option, because I think for the first time in a long time, and maybe for the first time ever, there's a chance for a viable third option to win, because the public doesn't want either one of the main party candidates.
So I worked in bars for 25 years, and bars are kind of a bad business, but there were some bars I worked in that made a ton of money for quite a while, even though the owner was an idiot, because the bar was situated in a good place. It was popular.
Location.
Yeah.
Location.
And the deal is, like, we have the opportunity to, like, you talk about tough choices, getting us out of our financial difficulties, but we can also get a huge help from the economic benefits of increasing technology if we're in a position to embrace it. So my feeling is that you want competent government of some type in there, just to keep things on an even keel, while McKinsey says that AI may double the world's GDP. But if we're a country of idiots that's anti-education, then we're going to miss out on a lot of that. If we can just have normal government, the way we've had for decades until recently, then maybe we get the lucky windfall from technology, the way a lucky idiot bar owner can still make money just due to fortunate circumstances.
But just keep in mind, Rick, when you look at recent polling, not with regard to people, but with regard to other factors, the public's opinion of confidence in government overall is at or near an all-time low.
As it should be.
Yeah. No, but
Well, the thing is, David, the problem I think you have as politicians is you have to lie to get the votes. In other words, when I listen to Biden, he has to be deceptive in order to get people to vote for him. So the hard issues that you're discussing aren't popular issues. In other words, to tell people, hey, Medicare trust. I didn't hear him say once, the Medicare trust fund is going to go broke this decade, and we have a plan to fix it. Did you hear that in the speech? Nope, because you can't get votes telling people the Medicare trust fund's going broke and we have a plan to fix it. So they don't discuss it. They don't discuss Social Security is going to go broke next decade and we have a plan to fix it. Nope, because there's no votes. And there's no votes saying, hey, interest on the national debt is our highest budget item today. And ultimately, the government isn't going to be able to pay for anything.
Presidents.
So how can they get elected when all they can do is get up and lie to get a vote? Yeah.
Presidents who tell Americans we have to make tough choices don't get reelected. The
Bingo.
First George Bush, not going to raise taxes, not going to raise. Oops, we got to raise taxes. Not reelected. Jimmy Carter said we got to do austerity. Everybody has to turn down their thermostats in the winter and wear a sweater. Americans voted Reagan in, so we could have SUVs. So yeah, but Biden, whoever gets elected, will be a lame duck president. They can't be elected again. And somebody who's a reasonable person could say, yep, all right, now we're going to make some, I got to tell you guys some bad news. We have to make tough choices. And anyway.
Well, several things. One, I was in the George H.W. Bush administration and in the Reagan administration. And in my view, George H.W. Bush made a mistake at the convention, because what he said was, read my lips, no new taxes, which was stupid because his opponent had already announced that he wanted to significantly raise taxes. And therefore, all he needed to say is, my opponent has already told you that he intends to raise taxes. I'm here to tell you that I will do everything I can to avoid having to do that. That's all he had to say. All right. But he was a leader because he did try to make some reforms on the fiscal front, both on the spending side and the revenue side. Clinton was a leader. He was the last fiscally responsible president who worked with the Republican Congress to be able to make some reforms on the spending side and on the revenue side. We haven't had a leader in the White House, Democrat or Republican, who leads on fiscal issues since Clinton. And that's what we need. You're right, Rick, that if Trump or Biden get elected, they've only got one more term. Maybe they'll actually, have a mea culpa moment and actually go to the American people with the facts and truth of tough choices. I will tell you this, though. The people aren't stupid. They know you can't spend more money than you make, charge the credit card without having a day of reckoning. They can't do it. They know eventually the country can't do it. And so they're willing to accept tough choices if they're part of a comprehensive goal-based plan consistent with principles and values that bring people together rather than divide them apart. Alice Rivlin, and others proved that in 2012. But the difference is you got to have a president who will lead. And right now, we don't have one. We didn't in the last administration. And that's one of the other reasons why I think No Labels has got to think about a third option. Kim?
I agree with you. We need a leader, but we need a leader that can unite. Because and I heard this the other night at a comedian. But we haven't united in a very long time. And that's been our biggest issue is nobody seems to be able to unite because it's been a popularity contest about people. They've learned to divide us by people. And what we need to do is unite by policy. Let's put lists of policies up and get people to support the policies and then let the policies elect the president. Who's willing to take these policies and fix and these solutions and fix it? And that's what we need is which president or which person will be willing to take those on and actually make them happen. And we hear promises, Nick, we hear promises every day, but promises are meant to be broken. They are very deceptive acts because they loophole all of these promises because they are politicians. They know how to write the laws to loophole everything they say. But nobody tells us anything that we don't want to hear, right? They tell us what we want to hear. But I will tell you this. I think the Federal Reserve will become the swing vote. Whatever they choose to do over the summer, whether it's lower the loan interest rates and the mortgage interest rates, or whether they keep them and jack them up and housing goes up, that will determine the president. And I think if they keep everything up, Trump will become the president. And if they lower everything and get everything back to where students can buy a house when they graduate from college and they fix a few things, then Biden will become president.
Well, pardon me 1 second. I would respectfully suggest that you're onto something here, okay? That we've had too many elections that are about personalities. Okay. I personally think that the reason that Hillary Clinton lost and the reason that Trump lost is because people voted against them rather than voting for them. Okay. I think a lot of people are in that same situation right now. I would respectfully suggest that neither Trump nor Biden can unite the country. They're both very divisive. The State of the Union address was not a State of the Union address. It was a campaign speech, okay, with a lot of misinformation. And the thing that I really want to focus on, and then I'll turn it back to Nick, who can recognize who he wants, is you're talking about the approach that No Labels is trying to take. Because No Labels, if you look at nolabels.org, there's something called a common sense agenda. It was published last summer. It is based upon extensive polling of the American people. It covers 30 issues that the American people are concerned about and want solved. And it has a way forward as to how to address those issues. So one of the screening criteria for candidates that we would consider if we run a ticket is what is their level of commitment to that common sense agenda? To run an issue-oriented, solutions-based campaign with a unity ticket that is focused on solving problems and stays out of the personality business and actually starts focusing on results.
A huge problem is the news being broken that it's lazy. It comes in two different flavors, conservative or liberal, which keeps people divided. And also we get spoiled with that we can only listen to 3-word messages. 50 years ago, if you wanted to do a skit about the president, you'd have him standing next to an easel and pointing at a chart. The last big politician to show America a chart was Al Gore 20 years ago with his hockey stick chart of global warming. That we need an explainer in chief. We need people to make them listen long enough to understand some of this stuff, and we're not getting it.
I have a hockey stick chart that's on debt to GDP, which I use virtually every speech that I give, which I used for the 2012 National Fiscal Responsibility Bus Tour. And let me come back. We spent 4 hours with people educating them on where we've been, where we are, where we're headed, how we compare to others, why we've got to make tough choices, what are some of the options, what should the goal be, what should the principles and values be. 77 to 97% agreement on specific reforms. They're in the book. All of those are in the book, 77 to 97% agreement. And how much progress have we made since then? Very little.
How do you get people to sit down, and how do you get the guy who's driving while he's texting to pay attention to you long enough to learn about your chart or your suggestions or our issues?
Well, in this particular case, the way that we did it was we actually had half-day sessions on a Saturday, and we recruited a demographically representative group of voters from that geopolitical jurisdiction. And they dedicated the time, and we dedicated the time to have a meaningful exchange of information. They had electronic confidential balloting devices so they could give immediate feedback on a confidential basis about what they were presented. They could ask questions, they could get clarifications. And after doing all of that, and after, providing illustrative solutions, and I underline the word illustrative because there's, these are a way to solve the problem, not necessarily the way, right? We got 77 to 97%.
So it seems like you need to invite America out to lunch on a Saturday, the way they do for timeshare, the way they do for Amway. You say, come have lunch. Lunch is on us. All you have to do is listen to what we're, for
I have to say, you're right.
I don't think we can handle 341 million at once, though.
But I think you're right, Rick.
I think the fiscal commission needs to follow the model that we used in 2012, and maybe do it, in 5 different regions of the country. Right. And supplement that with online type of activities, if you will, and other type of activities. We need to learn the lessons. It works.
Or you get celebrities to do spots for you. Taylor Swift for the libs, Tim McGraw for the conservatives, and they say, "Look, here are the issues facing us."
Yep. Yeah. Well, I agree. They can play a role. They're just not going to solve the problem, but they can get.
They won't solve the problem.
They can get the eyeballs on it.
They can get the people behind it and everything. I did have a quick question. Well, actually, 2 quick questions and everything. But I'd love to hear your thoughts around this, David, because I don't know as much as you do when it comes to economics and trillion-dollar deficits. But I did watch the president's speech, and I kept hearing him talk about how he had eliminated this amount of deficit and that amount of deficit. And I was just wondering your take on that aspect of the speech, because like I said, I don't know enough about what he was saying and the debts, not having done the kind of work that you have done to know your assessment of his comments. And then I've got a second follow-up question that's slightly different.
First, I should have put my boots on before I listened to the State of the Union, because there was a lot of BS in it. Okay. There was a lot of disinformation, but has the deficit gone down from the levels that it was when we were pushing out trillions of dollars to deal with COVID? Yes. That's because COVID's over. It's not because he made any tough choices to try to put our finances in order. Has our inflation rate come down since the peak of September of 2022? Yes. But we do not have the lowest inflation rate in the world. In fact, about half the countries in the world have a lower inflation rate than we do. Okay. GDP growth, is our GDP growing? Yes. But so the problem is that politicians tend to try to stress the positive, ignore the negative, and not put things in context. Okay. And I come back to what I think most Americans think about. Am I better off today than I was when this guy got in office? It's not that complicated. I think that's what people think. And as of today, although it's 8 months left until the election, based on everything I've seen, a majority say no, I'm not.
It depends on whether you're comparing today to 2020 when COVID shut the country down, or 2021 when we were, coming out of it.
Yeah, I'm comparing it rightly or wrongly to January 21st, 2021. Okay, which was when President Biden was sworn into office. And as I said, I come back. I mean, you can go back and you can see that unemployment. Here's another example. Okay, they say the president's created more jobs than any president in history. Well, that's bull. Okay, I mean, a vast majority of those jobs are jobs that recovered from COVID. They said, well, we've got the lowest unemployment rate ever. Wrong. Okay, I mean, you can look back during the period of November 2019 through February of 2020, and you can see that there was a lower unemployment rate. Okay, and so my problem is that if politicians were just honest to say, look, this was high, it's getting better. Like it was up, it's getting better. Okay. Real wages, they were down, now they're up, they're getting better. I mean, if people were just honest with people, they might pay more attention. I think that's one of the reasons why there's such low confidence in government, because people know they're being BS'd.
Hey, Dave, along those same lines, and that was
you get the story from one side, and then the other side conflicts that story.
Yeah.
And they both show data to support whatever they say.
Right.
And and you think, well, I believe them because they just posted a chart. Oh, I believe them because they just posted a chart. Well, who am I to believe? And it's very frustrating because you're right, David. There is no honesty in disclosing the facts of what's really happening. And Nick, you're right. They don't want to be honest because being honest means they might not get elected. And maybe we should just say, you know what, be honest with us and tell us how to fix this. And maybe you can get elected. But I've been talking to the youth. A lot of the youth are very disappointed, very scared of their future. They see no future, David. They see no future with our economy. And in my talk to them, I go, you know what? Next time they shut down, go throw them out of office. Next time they shut down, go in and unseat every one of them. You have that right. Millions of you young people show up and tell every one of them not to show up to work anymore, just like they treat.
It's interesting if they were selling securities.
That should be illegal.
It would be illegal if they were selling securities, everything that they said in the State of the Union, because they actually have misrepresentation laws. If you take a security and you misrepresent it, you get sued. You could by FINRA. You have to have everything cleared by your broker dealer, which is one reason I don't have a lot of my business partners on any of these shows, because they've told me, look, I can't get up here unless I have what I said cleared by the broker dealer, and I can't misrepresent. I can't do deceit. Otherwise, the SEC and FINRA will shut me down. But that's SEC. I'm selling a security. Okay. Now it comes to a politician.
Well, the U.S. is selling securities.
Pardon?
The U.S. is selling Treasury securities.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah.
When it comes to U.S. politicians, they don't have the same rules a securities FINRA broker would, who's Series 7 licensed or Series 26 licensed. They can say anything they want with impunity and misrepresent. Now, with that, some of the solutions that we can find are things that Rick point out, which is AI and technological improvements to help the economy. The other thing is internationally, what they do internationally. The reason I said, hey, you could charge people to come into the U.S., like I'm looking at Spain and Portugal, getting other visas and buying properties there. Well, Spain and Portugal both have the golden visa. You put up $1 million and here comes your visa ticket. You put up 400,000 in Portugal to buy a home, here comes your golden visa ticket. It was so popular that they actually had to discontinue the $400,000 home in Portugal because too many people were buying homes there. In Spain, they still have it. You put up $500,000, then you buy a home, you get a golden visa. Interesting. I go, well, that's a lot of money to put up. But here's the funny thing. Interest rates in Spain are 2.5%. They're not like the US where you pay 6 or 7%. So fact is you can afford a nice house over there, which over here is impossible. But I don't get why we don't have immigration laws that are more pay to play like they do internationally. Because the US has to look at somehow making up a huge deficit and debt that we've had for the last 20 years. Like I said, Clinton was the last one who balanced the budget. In the meantime, we've just gone, like a drunken sailor, and I don't see this country being economically.
Have you looked into how much you have to bring to the U.S. to get into the U.S.? Because I feel like if you bring the U.S. $2 million, if you're a Chinese industrialist and you want your family to, I think if you bring the U.S. a ton of money, they'll let you in.
Yeah, well, they have quotas for different countries, but the real problem that you have when it comes to the illegal immigrants or the asylum immigrants, they run to the border, say things are horrible, let me in for free. Okay. And we have enough poor people.
It's not only for free. We give
pay
free
me to come in. No.
Free education, free housing, food, not all at the federal level. A lot of that is at the state and local
level. Right.
Yeah, well, that's right. But it's still government, right? A lot of states have problems too. I know there are certain countries, and I think Canada's one of them, where if you want to immigrate there, you've got to demonstrate that you're self-sufficient. If you're not self-sufficient, you can't immigrate there. The problem is that what's going on right now is you have one political party, and for the record, I'm a political independent. I think both parties are a problem right now. You have one political party that's trying to end up bringing millions of people in to make them dependent on government and beholden to them under the idea that maybe eventually they'll be able to vote. I mean, they're not talking about people that are going to necessarily contribute to innovation, which is what Rick's talking about. Okay.
Right.
And do we need to reform our rules with regard to temporary work visas? Do we need to provide a pathway to legal status versus citizenship under certain? Yeah, we do. But you got to control the border first.
Dave, aren't they making an incorrect assumption though? Because one of the assumptions that they're making is that a lot of the folks coming from Latin America are going to vote necessarily Democratic. And I know for a fact that there are a number of Latin Americans, because it is not a monolithic group, that are very culturally conservative. So I don't know necessarily that they're going to vote overwhelmingly Democratic, because there are a number of those that would be voting Republican based on their value system.
We have a huge labor shortage coming up the way Japan has now, where our birth rate is low enough that there won't be enough native-born Americans to care for all the increasingly old Americans. You could make a deal with immigrants, which is, give us 2, 3, 4 years of caring for the aged. We'll give you a wage. It won't be great, but it'll be enough to survive on. And then we can look at you for citizenship. And you can say, well, yeah, but they speak Spanish. Everybody's got a translator in their hands now, like a Star Trek style translator. Your phone works fine for talk. You change a 92-year-old's poopy diapers for 2-3 years.
Rick, I would argue that some of those jobs are already in that society, because the number of those folks that are working in the hotels and in the orderly fields and a number of other fields are literally of the Hispanic descent. So I would argue that is already happening and everything. I did have a quick question for you, David. That's what I was going to allude to earlier and everything.
Can you hold just for a second and come back with a question after I respond to this?
Yeah.
The birth rate in the United States is 1.64. You need 2.1 in order to maintain a stable population. So the bottom line is we need immigration. No ifs, ands, or buts. But we need to be intelligent about the type of immigration we're getting. Do we need more people to do the kinds of things you're talking about, Rick? Yes. Do we need more people to be able to work on farms and yes. Do we need more people to try to do lawn keeping or whatever during the summertime? Yes. Okay. But, we need to make sure we're screening those people, and we need to have a reasonable number of people, and they need to be able to be self-supporting. And there are analogies here to other things. Student loans. Student loans is the largest asset the federal government has on the balance sheet. And the current administration wants to give them away, write them off without any service. I think we need to be open-minded to being able to get people to do things that need to be done from an economic standpoint. And in exchange for that, there's a benefit to them. But just giving away stuff and not doing adequate screening with regard to the background of these people, because let me tell you, Cuba emptied the prisons a number of years ago, and Venezuela's emptying the prisons now. And that's a fact.
We do. Okay. So we do have programs that excuse some of your student debt if you go, like if you're a doctor and you go to South Dakota where nobody wants to go to be a doctor.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah. But also we used to have a great test of whether somebody should be a citizen. You join the military, you give them 2 years and you're on the path to citizenship. Serving the country for 2 years in the Army, Navy, that's a great test of whether they're suitable.
I agree with that. I agree with it. Mark, you had your hand.
I just had my question. If there was just a follow up to what that was saying, but there was also Peace Corps if you didn't want to work in the military, because not everybody is military cut out. Not knocking you, Dave, because I know you got some military ties, even though you didn't serve, but you got some military consulting ties. But my question is, a lot of times, and this comes back to the economics and even to what Kim was talking about with the division, and I know part of what's going on in the division is a lot of people are being asked to by supporting whatever their community is, meaning that if you're Asian, you buy Asian. If you're Black, you buy Black. If you're Hispanic, you buy Hispanic. Or if you are a local community member, you buy local. And I was just wondering your thoughts around some of these more narrow buy efforts, because there are a number of those kinds of campaigns throughout the country. And I was just wondering your take on that and how it can either help or hurt the nation as one that is in that economic space.
Well, I would prefer that we buy American to the maximum extent possible. I get concerned to the extent that you want to end up dividing below that. Okay. I'm not saying, that it's bad. I get concerned about dividing it, because one of the problems we have in this country, which we talked about at the beginning, is that people are wanting to divide us rather than unite us. Mm-hmm. And I think that unites us is that we're all Americans. Now, part of our policies for too many years encouraged offshoring of manufacturing and other activities, which made us unduly dependent upon others, in particular China. And we've got to do more onshoring in order to become more self-sufficient to the maximum extent that we can.
Well,
I want the industries of the future.
Just to follow up just really quickly, the argument that is made is that if you don't buy in your local community or you don't buy in your ethnic community and everything, that money is going too much out and not enough in. So that is the argument that those people make.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's another way that things are kind of divided. And part of it, what makes me think of it is, don't give the money to the man, give the money to me.
I want the industries of the future to be American.
Right. I understand that.
Like a lot of people do surgical tourism, but if you need a knee replacement, you go to Thailand because it's cheaper there. And like if you want plastic surgery, the best is done in Brazil. And we've got $1 trillion industry that's starting up, which is buying extra years of life. Medical technology is going to start being able to give you like an extra decade of healthy, youngish looking life. And I want all that industry to be based in America.
Yeah, but good luck with that. When you go to Walmart, you notice you buy clothes that's made in Vietnam, China, Bangladesh, Colombia, You look for the United States. The United States doesn't manufacture anything anymore.
Well, then we
I
should
mean-
at least manufacture the robots that can make clothes to make it cheaper to make clothes in America than in Bangladesh.
Well, we're
Yeah,
also
that would be true.
going to, we have failed in the sense that we will no longer have enough physicians and doctors in our country. So, medical tourism did become a business for a reason, but majority of our doctors will not exist. They're starting to fade away now because thanks to the way insurance takes care of us, insurance doesn't do anything for them and it doesn't do anything for us. It prevents them from treating people the way they need to be treated, and it ties their hands. It never pays them the way they should be paid. And then it doesn't do anything for us health wise. So I think if I were in charge, I would do away with the insurance companies for medical care, and medical care would just become that. But we're not going to have enough doctors for the amount of people that we have, especially with the number of undocumented people coming into this country. So I think, like David said, we need to make sure what we're getting in this country is what we need as well. And it's not just servicing your landscaping and things like that, but maybe some doctors and physicians and I'm not going to say attorneys, but
Well, we have too many
I just
attorneys.
had my annual physical and I asked the doctor, is AI sneaking into your field? And he said, yeah, a little bit. We're experimenting with AI answering our emails, which is fine. It's a fine start. And as AI gets better, like AI can maybe reduce insurance costs because they found in studies when AI reminds doctors, hey, buddy, wash your hands. When was the last time you washed your hands? Something as simple as that can reduce doctor-caused illness and injury.
Well, part of it's
offshore-
our education system. Our
Offshore,
Yeah, go on, David.
real quickly, talking about offshoring, we
Yeah.
all know that St. Patty's Day is coming up
Mhm.
on Sunday, right? And everybody's Irish on St. Patty's Day. So I was looking online and I saw this really neat, pullover with, the shamrock and green or whatever. So I ordered it. And I just got, I ordered like 3 weeks ago, right? I mean, sure, they got to get it by now. I got an email, 2 days ago. It's been put on a plane coming from China.
Right.
God knows when the hell I'm going to get it.
it's
That's
going to
what I'm
vote.
saying. But we could manufacture more doctors here. Actually, in law school, I was teaching Campbell University in
Manufacture.
Raleigh. Well, that's what you're doing. They actually created a medical school. So there's a couple more medical schools that are coming up, but we need more medical schools and medical courses. At Pod TV Network, every Wednesday at 2:00, we actually have medicine and science. We have a medical show with Dr. Patmos, who's heading this up, who's an MD, FACP, board certified internal medicine. Okay, now I think that's good for people to learn about medicine. When I ask my grandkids, have you taken any medical courses? No. Why not? It's not offered.
No, but they offer biology in grade school, so that would be a medical course. So they do offer biology. It might not be medicine, but there is biology.
Yeah, I know, but they don't offer medicine. We're just doing what I call basic medicine and science courses. And if you started offering these courses to these children, then you have a greater chance that they would end up going into the medical field. When you don't even offer it in elementary school, middle school, or high school, then there's a high probability you're not going to see doctors, you're not going to see nurses, and you're going to have shortages. So our education system at the lower levels is failing America. Last thing, they do a report on the top universities in the world because I'm looking to send my grandkids overseas. You thought the United States was in the top 10 right now. Half of it is occupied by Chinese universities. Go on.
If any of you have pets, we also have a vet shortage. When you see how expensive, there's like 4 vet schools in the country. It's harder to get into vet school than medical school.
Yeah.
One of the leading vet schools is in Raleigh.
Of Einstein, Medical School of Einstein was just donated at $1 billion for their medical students to attend for free.
Not pay debt. Yeah.
Right. So the debt's going to be paid for our doctors there, but maybe we can do that in other places because that's a field we need. Desperately need are more and more doctors nowadays. But I thought that was beautiful because it was a professor a retired professor who
Yeah.
donated the $1 billion.
$1 billion endowment.
So, but also like not
Last long.
just to make more doctors like Nick wants, but like being
Or
medically
manufacturing.
literate in hospitals. The third leading cause of death is doctors screwing up.
Well, I have good news for us. I have good news on that department. Nick, you asked for it, and the Merck manual is in the Pod TV store. So I did add it. So it is in the store at your request. And I'll be adding the book that the Common Sense book that I just saw that I got to get of Dave's, because we've got several of his books in there and everything. I did have a look. I know we're winding out of time, but I had to let Dave know one of the greatest things that I ever did, because I did a couple of events. I know we might be talking about events on the media show, but I actually did a St. Pat's Day parade with a friend of mine, and we actually had a improv troupe, and a majority African American improv troupe that was in the St. Pat's Day parade. So we actually had our green moment on that particular day. Jatofi, I think, was on that same parade, if I remember correctly.
We're all Irish on St. Patty's Day. My grandson was born on St. Patty's Day, Daniel Patrick Walker.
Oh, happy St. Pat's, everyone. I gotta go. Take care.
Take care.
Take it.
Yeah.
We're not done yet.
We're not done yet. We have 3 more minutes.
Oh, we got to use that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got
We got to use that 3 minutes, but yeah, I thought you would enjoy that, Dave. It was fun when I did that, and like I said, I think we had some comedians. We had Jatovi, who's been on the show. I think he might have been there, but we definitely performed improv while celebrating St. Pat's Day, and that was in Raleigh. I think that was about 5 or 6
We
years.
have an improv surplus in Los Angeles. Everybody gets invited to improv shows, and it makes you want to back away.
Well,
Yeah,
my
but they have a lot of
grandson
talent.
turns 18 on Sunday, so that'll be a big day. Not as big as 21, but
All right. So
21
in LA,
right
we have
on.
to retrain improv people to be doctors.
Well, what you need to do is get your Merck manual. And so it's going to be available on the Pod TV store. So I got to get my Merck manual. I used to read it when I was a kid. My mom was the head nurse at Tampa General Hospital.
It can save your life if you can talk to if you can understand and talk
the doctors
to your doctor
say
about your issues.
Right.
It can prevent disaster.
Yeah, but the funny thing, and see, this is what I'm saying. We could teach medicine and science at the elementary, middle school, and high school level. Okay, instead I hear all the teachers, I want a pay raise. I don't have a problem with a pay raise. Please change your curriculum. If you change your curriculum, you say, we're going to be introducing medicine and science at elementary, middle school, and high school, I would go give them a pay raise. If they're saying I got a pay raise because, hey, I just want one, I'm not interested.
Well,
But,
as we know, we're not top 25 in the world in K through 12 education, and
Yeah, we're horrible.
This is a problem. Civic responsibility is a problem. Financial literacy is a problem. We need to re-engineer our curriculum based upon what the country needs and what individuals need in order to be able to achieve their full potential. We're not doing that.
We also have to re-engineer how people learn, because 100 years ago, when everybody was on the farm, school was the most interesting part of the day. Now it's the least interesting part because you're divorced from your phone. You're going to get yelled at if you use it in class, and that's your information source. And learning via teacher lecturing for an hour isn't necessarily the most effective way.
Rick, you've also got to be careful about what sources you're getting your information from, because there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation on the internet. Just as you mentioned before, we're divided with regard to the media sources. Some are to the far right, some are to the far left. They don't really want to bring it all together in a way that people can make up.
Right, you have 2 different flavors of news.
Right.
So
now we're at the hour, so we have to go because.
All right, take care.
We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.